ESPN senior NFL and fantasy football insider KC Joyner set to join us here. The football scientist, ESPN.com, each and every Monday and Friday. He gave us the matchups to watch on Friday. What was the breakdown that he saw as to why the Eagles sit at 2-2? As we bring the football scientist and ESPN.com senior NFL insider KC Joyner here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. We'll also go around the league, and we got our red zone coming up at the bottom of the hour. But KC, we look at the Eagles at 2-2. Ryan asked me earlier, what should we be more concerned about? The offense scoring 23 points or the defense giving up 26, including 3 fourth-down conversions in overtime?
I am more worried about the defense because Al Davis used to say, in fact, Amy Trask, who used to be the CEO of the Raiders, she posts this on her Twitter feed all the time. She says Al would constantly remind her, never let your team be without cornerbacks. And the Eagles right now have some weaknesses at cornerback. And Bill Walsh always said if you have a weakness at cornerback, an offense can always exploit it. And right now, that's the bigger concern because if you just don't have that talent out there, you can't play call around it.
So what is different about this talent than last year? I mean, essentially they swapped Patrick Robinson out with Sidney Jones. Mills and Darby are the same guys. You got Douglas, who barely gets any playing time. But what is different about this secondary?
Jalen Mills is starting to remind me of Lito Shepherd in a good way and a bad way. Lito used to be that sort who would he'd make the big play, but he'd give up 9 to 10 yards per attempt on average. And if you have a cornerback who's getting double-digit yards per attempt, allowing that total, it doesn't matter unless they're making 12 picks or something, or some crazy number. It just, when you do the math, it doesn't add up. You have to get that number down. Mills is just giving up too many big plays, and if you can't, he's the same guy, but he's giving up more big plays than he did last year. And and again, against an offense, Tennessee's offense has been not atrocious this year, middle of the road, and I know Corey Davis is a good receiver. For him to do what he did against this defense, you should be able to do better than that with what the Eagles had in the secondary.
They lost Rodney McLeod, and Corey Graham had to step in there. Graham's been good in his role, but it seemed like he got a little overexposed. I mean, a veteran, maybe he'll pick it back up, but I think that was an area, too, that the loss of Rodney McLeod seemed like that stood out.
Yeah, you shouldn't. Again, the Titans tried 16 passes. Marcus Mariota attempted 16 vertical passes. He completed 8 of them for 179 yards. It's 11.2 yards per attempt. It's a good total, but you're talking a quarterback who had an elbow problem. They just had a receiver quit the team this past week. This is not the kind of passing offense you would think would get 179 yards against the Eagles. But I'm just as much concerned about the Eagles' pass rush as I am anything else, because that's part of the reason that the secondary got exposed like it did.
Yeah, 327 yards to Mariota. Davis had 161. This is a team that Tennessee doesn't have a big play guy. I mean, really, Davis is kind of a possession guy. 9 for 161. He had 15 targets yesterday. So what does that say about the Eagles' pass rush that they were able to get 327 on them?
Eagles came into the league. I did a study for my ESPN Plus article last week. I graded the matchups for teams in pass rushing, pass blocking, run defense. And both the Titans and the Eagles were in the bottom quarter of the league in their respective categories in the passing game, meaning the Titans, I think, were 23rd in my pass blocking grades, and the Eagles they were 21st. They're just outside of the top quarter. The Eagles were as far as pass rushing goes. But in this contest, Tennessee allowed only pass rush pressure on 22.4% of plays. That was 10th best in the league for week 3, and it's not a good sign when you're allowing that. And the Eagles, by the way, they decided they want to go blitz this situation. They blitzed Mariota on 26.5% of his dropbacks. That's the 8th highest total. So they realized we're not getting pass rush pressure with the front four. We need to bring some people. It still wasn't working.
Yeah, which is surprising. You add Michael Bennett to the mix. Derek Barnett's in his second year, looks to be a better player. Where is that defensive line maybe not as strong?
I just think that the Titans have their offensive line. I think a big part of it yesterday was the Titans' offensive line did start to finally play closer to its talent level. They'd had some injuries, but that's still a very talented group. And even if you have, they were a deep line too. So if they had an injury or two, I would still expect them to be able to fight their way through it, and they did. I also think that the Eagles were concentrating a lot on stopping the run, which they're very good at yesterday. But in stopping the run against that team, I guess they thought maybe Mariota, we don't have to worry as much about the passing game. But Mariota's elbow, you told me his elbow's hurt. I'm not looking at that game thinking that his elbow's hurt. And if you can make a quarterback who's got a bad elbow look that good, it's a concern.
Yeah, some of our beat guys locally suggested that the Eagles were a little surprised at the amount of times that Tennessee threw the ball. Like they thought that they would be a lot more conservative with their game plan, and that they did catch them off guard a little bit.
And Tennessee had been does have still a powerful rushing attack, and their run blocking numbers were better than their pass blocking numbers. But I think that Tennessee probably just came into the game. Remember, Vrabel's shown himself to be a pretty smart coach, and he said he picked Peterson's brain in the off season, and I think maybe Peterson told him a little too much or something, because Vrabel knew a lot of things to do to counter what the Eagles were doing. But I think they came into the game in the contest going, we know we can't run the football against this team, that our run blocking is just not good enough this year. And the Eagles they were third in my run defense metrics coming into that game, and I think they're still going to be top 5 after I complete the Week 4 breakdowns. But I think they realized we're not going to run against these guys, so we've got to throw. And Corey Davis, by the way, yeah, he is primarily a possession receiver, but he's one of those possession receivers who can hit bigger plays. He's a possession receiver. I guess I'd call him a short and medium receiver. He's not going to do much on deep passes or stretch vertical passes. That's not what he does, but he's very good in the other passes. And honestly, the Eagles didn't have anybody who could slow him down, but if he plays at his talent level, there are a lot of cornerbacks who can.
Let me ask you about the splits the Eagles have on the road as opposed to home defense. Anything to read into that? I mean, do you make something of, they're not as good of a defense on the road, and that's normal? Because there are some people that are starting to say, maybe this defense isn't as good as we thought, or is it as simple as, no, they're just not as good on the road?
I think that the defense probably isn't as good as we thought. Having said that, again, they had really good metrics against their ground game. I think the Eagles, though, they need to be to the point to where, and again, I think honestly, I looked at the game yesterday and thinking, now the Titans are throwing more than you guys expected, but did you really expect them to run the ball that often? I know Mariota's got a banged up elbow and they had trouble with the tackles and things, but their running game hasn't done much, and they know that you guys know they can stop them, so maybe you should have been expecting them to throw more often. Plus, the Eagles, their secondary has been kind of shaky this year, so I think the Eagles just need to go and say, we're going to now stop the pass. Schematically, that's all we're going to do. We're going to make sure that you can hit big plays against us passing-wise, and ask their front seven to just win the one-on-one battles and say, we're not going to give you a lot of help there. You're just going to have to stop them that way. It may end up giving more big plays in the ground game like they did last year, because they've been a lot better at that this year. I'd rather give up big ground game runs, because those usually you can keep 10, 20 yards rather than the longer plays you get in the passing game.
Fair. I know one of the things that you do for ESPN.com is look at the offensive lines for fantasy perspectives, but when you look at the Eagles' offensive line, what's going on there? 4 sacks to Wentz yesterday. He was hit a lot. It seems that the offensive line, I don't know, they ran the ball okay, 22 for 117. They kind of got away from the run a little bit. Ajayi was 15 for 70. Small was 5 for 39. I mean, both of them had very good yards carry, but what's going on with that Eagle offensive line?
When it came to the ground game, the Eagles had a huge edge coming into this matchup. I'm looking at my Week 3 grades, and Philadelphia was 8th in my run blocking matchups. Again, they're probably going to be about that level when I get my Week 4 reviews done. But Tennessee came into that game ranked 25th in my rush defense grade. So I'm looking at that going, Philadelphia had a huge edge there. But when I'm looking at pass blocking, Philadelphia's blockers came in ranked 15th in the league in my metrics, and Tennessee, their pass rush came in ranked 8th. So looking at that, it was the Eagles should have said, we're going to go very run-heavy. And I think that with Alshon back, I think they finally said, well, wow, we can go to our passing game, when the matchup said, don't lean so heavily on your passing game, lean heavily on your ground attack, because these guys aren't good at that. And I think the Eagles probably just decided we're tired of not being able to throw the football, and it probably worked against them.
So when you look at Philadelphia, one thing I brought up earlier in the show, Casey, they lost Torrey Smith. They brought in Mike Wallace. Wallace got hurt. Him and Wentz never played. Is that an element forget their numbers. Smith didn't have great numbers here last year. He had pretty good playoffs, but overall he didn't have a great season numerically. But what he brings to the field, is that something when you look at Philly's offense and say, there's something missing on this offense?
I'm looking at Philadelphia's metrics, so I'll take it from that perspective because they threw 15 passes, vertical passes yesterday, and 4 went to Ertz, 2 went to Matthews, 1 went to Aiken, 4 went to Aguilar. I don't want that many. I don't want 11 of my targets going to those people. I'm okay with Ertz, but again, the tight end has a limited role in the vertical and stretch vertical passing game. There is a role, but that's not who primarily your vertical game is going to go through. I don't want Jordan Matthews getting 2 targets if I get up. And I know he caught one over 56. I get it. He made a big play. But overall, I don't want the targets going to Aiken. By the way, Aguilar 0 for 4 on the vertical passes. That's not what he does.
Drops,
so
man.
Almost,
a lot of drops.
Yeah. And I don't want to try. If he's dropping short passes, I can live with it. I don't have a problem with that as much. I mean, you don't like it either way, but if you're dropping vertical passes, stop throwing it to them. They have to have that tear the top off the defense kind of guy. And Jeffrey's 3 for 4 for 60 on the vertical passes. He did okay, but I still think I want to see more of the targets go to a guy like Jeffrey or to somebody who can tear the top off the defense. I don't want Aguilar involved in a vertical game anymore need be.
Yeah, and one thing, we talked about it Friday that you mentioned that Tennessee was pretty good against the tight end, but you still wanted to see the Eagles go there. They went to Ertz 14 times. He had 10 for 112. So, it's evident that Wentz and Ertz have something going, but it seems, Jeffrey had 9 targets. He had 8 catches, but he's off with everybody else. Aguilar had 12 targets and 5 catches. That's unacceptable.
Yeah, you can't be going to Aguilar that much. And again, Ertz had the 14. Goddard had 2 also. So you have the 2 together. It's 12 for 16 for 125 yards. That's good out of the tight end. And that's a team that's very good at stopping a tight end. So they did get that established, but I still don't want so much of my offense to go through Aguilar. And I don't want to say this yet because Aguilar before last year it was this guy's a bust and he's not a very good player and then he gets 1 year and it's maybe he's going back to who he was, and if that's the case that's really bad because that wasn't a very good player before last year. He was not.
Let's hope that's not the case. All right, moving forward here. I mean, you watch that game yesterday and just say, look, Tennessee is a tricky team. They're a tough team. They're good at home, and it's a game that you're disappointed you lost, but put it behind you and move on? Or are there some concerning possible trends that you saw in this game that could linger?
Got to stop that vertical passing, and it's the thing that's concerning the most because the Titans were able to hit some passes. It's not. They're a very well coached team, and they're going to get the most out of their talent. They do actually have a good amount of talent. I mean, they're 3-1. I mean, it's a very good team, but their ground game,
they're just not flashy.
Yeah, they're just not flashy, and they don't have they do have more capabilities than they do. So to lose that game it's not a terrible thing. You can't be giving up the vertical passes like they do. You got to get more verticality. I think to me that's the whole season right now is you got to get more verticality on offense in the passing game, and you got to stop the verticality on defense. If you don't do that, if you're not hitting big plays in the passing game, and the other team is, you will lose a lot of games.
How's Carson Wentz 2 weeks in?
I liked him yesterday much. You could see the rust starting to wear off. He's not back to where he was, but you could see the rust starting to wear off. I still asking him to do what he's doing with a better set of talent around him, but still not the type of receiving core I think that he needs is a tough thing. I still question yesterday. Game plans or the matchup said you should have run the ball. Trust your ground game. You've got plenty of running backs and you're blocking very well. Trust your ground game if you need to until once gets that rust out.
All right, let's go around the league with KC on week 4 in the books tonight. We got Monday Night Football, Chiefs and Denver. Real quick, your thoughts tonight as I think this is an entertaining game. Should be anyway. I like Denver running the ball at home, but the Chiefs, pretty explosive offense. Their defense should be challenged on the road here. So I'm kind of intrigued by this one.
I mentioned that Wednesday article last week for ESPN's Plus section. Denver has by far the biggest advantage in blocking versus defense, both in run blocking versus run defense, pass blocking versus pass rushing. I mean, this is a mismatch for Denver. I think Denver's actually going to win this contest because they're going to be able to control the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball in a way Kansas City can't. And Mahomes on the road versus a talented secondary, I wouldn't be surprised if he has his worst game of the year. Still really good, but I wouldn't be surprised if he gives them a couple of big plays.
All right, let's take a look at the Sunday action. A lot of very intriguing storylines. We do a segment on Friday called What If? Like, what if this team wins? I said, what if the Bengals won and got to 3-1 and the Falcons would lose to go to 1-3. Would the story be the Falcons or the Bengals? I'm not sure. Are the Falcons just having one of those years where the injuries and they're falling apart, or are the Bengals supposed to be taken for real here?
I think the Falcons, it's just a matter of losing a couple games they could have won. If they were 2-2, people would just be saying it's a little bit of a rough start. So I'm okay with them. Their defense is still a bit of a weakness. They're getting too many shootouts, but I'd be less concerned if I were them. That's not as much of a story as Cincinnati. Cincinnati is a really good team. I put them very high in my power rankings this week for ESPN.com. I think I've got them fourth. I mean, they're doing well in a number of ways. Now they've got Tyler Boyd coming out as a receiver and things. That's really good. Loss of Eifert's going to hurt, but they've got a deep enough receiving core. They could probably absorb it.
Bears, 48-10. Might be the most eye-opening score of the weekend. Fitzpatrick run out of magic, but Trubisky with 6 TDs. So, are we starting to take the Bears serious at 3-1?
I don't want to think that Trubisky's going to do all that. By the way, he scored more fantasy points yesterday than anybody has scored all season long. And this is an incredible fantasy point explosion the first 4 weeks. But Trubisky, I've always pitched him as a number 1 overall guy, said that people shouldn't have been surprised he got taken. Yesterday showed that, hey, this is the type of quarterback, he's not going to do this every week, but he's got upper-tier QB1 upside if things go well. And the Bucs, they're just they're really bad secondary. In fact, what Pittsburgh did for a half to them on Monday night is what the Bears did to them for an entire game.
All right, let's go to Dallas, who came back late to beat Detroit. They get themselves to 2-2. We talked about it Friday. The winner of this game was going to get to 2-2. It's the Cowboys. So, did you see some positive signs from Dallas in this one?
They were able to stay with their ground game even when the defense is giving up some big plays. And their defense also made a couple times where they let a guy get open deep. Those are correctable issues. You're not just getting beat because you're being physically beaten, but I love how their ground game is starting to dominate. And mind you, they've had to replace some people in the offensive line. If they keep run blocking that well against the solid Detroit rush defense, if they can keep doing it against every team, the former they had a couple years ago can come back. I don't see 12 wins, but this is a tough team.
Packers get to 2-1-1. They shut out the Bills 22-0. You know, the Bills went on the road the week before and looked great. They looked pretty bad yesterday.
It shows what happens when they go up against a motivated opponent. And the Bills' offense is still, they're not the worst offense in the league because Arizona is just atrocious, but they're pretty close. And their defense is actually playing fairly well. But the Green Bay could come out and win that game the way they did. That's the big plus for them. By the way, they ran the ball exceptionally well. I wrote about it on my article today on the Week 4 review of blocking yesterday from a fantasy perspective. And they've got Aaron Jones. They're doing a split right now between him and Jamal Williams. They need to make Jones the bell cow because he is that much better. If they do that, this is even more dangerous.
Yeah, maybe my fantasy team wouldn't be 0-4. All right, the Texans go on the road and beat the Colts. The Colts, you know, Frank Reich came out, said, I'm not playing for a tie, which I don't really have a problem with. He knows that team isn't a Super Bowl caliber team, so go for it. I like that mentality there. But the Texans finally get off the snide there. They win 37-34 against Indianapolis.
The big surprise there was how often Andrew Luck threw vertical passes. I think it was 20 vertical passes in that contest, which is a really high number. I think he was saying, everybody thinks I can't throw the ball deep. Here, I'm going to go ahead and throw the ball deep. But I don't think that defense, you don't want to do that to that defense if you can help it. He got 250 yards on those passes, too, so he did really well. So Luck answered that question, but that's not what that team needs to do. They don't have the kind of defense they want to get in the shootouts.
Dolphins 38-7. They were undefeated coming in. We said, wow, we're going to find out a little bit about this Dolphins team. They fell flat on their face. The Patriots blow them out. It's not even close. So the Patriots do what many people expected.
They did, and the Dolphins got even worse news, and they lost another offensive lineman to a season-ending injury. They were projected to be the worst offensive line in the league. They did really well, subterfuge and different things to mask their blocking deficiencies. The last 2 weeks, they haven't been able to do that, and now that they've lost 2 of their starting linemen, I think that could be the worst offensive line in the league, and things are going to be really ugly down there.
Raiders, I don't know. I think the refs kind of helped them out in this game. I don't know how they're making some of the calls they did there, but the Browns and the Raiders with an entertaining game, 45-42. John Gruden gets his first win since returning, and the Browns get stopped in trying to win 2 in a row.
Go into that game, and if you say Cleveland's going to score 42 points, I mean, you can say it about any team if they're going to score that many points today. Are they going to win the game? Yeah, of course they are. Cleveland's defense was really good coming into that contest. They graded out really well in that contest. They graded out well in pass rushing. They were in the top 5 in my pass rushing metrics, run defense metrics. They were 15th. They were solid. I wouldn't have expected the Raiders to be able to do that. So it says that Gruden's play calling is starting to take hold. And if Cleveland's defense is as bad as it showed yesterday. I know their offense looks a lot better. Their blocking still is not that good. This is going to be a bad form of them. Everybody thinks it's going to be a playoff sleeper. That you better get some problems fixed or they're going to have another long season.
The rookie quarterbacks were 0-4 yesterday. That's because Josh Rosen lost to the Seahawks. They get a late field goal to win 20-17. Cardinals 0-4. Their season seems to be done. But the Seahawks 2-2. They're in the mix. Do we believe in them?
I still don't because their blocking still isn't that good. They did better yesterday than they did against the Cowboys the week before, where I said their run blocking wasn't that good. Yesterday, there wasn't game flow to allow them to get to it, so they were able to. And Arizona probably is not as good as their metrics are showing. So I'm iffy on Seattle because of the offensive line. In Arizona, though, I still liked how Rosen looked. And, yeah, it's going to be a lost season, but I liked where he took it offense yesterday versus where Bradford took it. I have a feeling by season's end this is going to be a competitive ball club.
All right, Saints go on the road and beat the Giants. That was a close game for a little bit. Saints pulled away in the fourth quarter. But I was impressed with the Saints on the road. I thought that was a tricky spot for them, having to go to the Giants, who had just played well the week before. But the Saints starting maybe to turn their season. They're 3-1, but they haven't looked like the Saints we saw last year. Yesterday they did.
Yeah, they're trying to get back to that run-heavy approach, and we're going to go ahead and be the ground-heavy team and have Breeze throw off of that. The first two games, they couldn't do that. Game flow said, you're in a shootout game, you've got to throw the ball a lot. They don't want to do that. Ingram comes back this week, and now that between that and everybody else they've got who can run the ball, and their run blocking, by the way, last 2 weeks has been appreciably better. Their run blocking was atrocious in weeks 1 and 2. So if the Saints can get back to doing what they get back to their blocking, they can play that formula they did last year, and that makes them a Super Bowl contender.
Chargers 2-2, so they had kind of said, look, we just got to get out of September. They're 500, so they're right there. 49ers, we know, with Garoppolo out, they're probably out of the mix. But they fought hard yesterday. Beathard got hurt in the game, but the Chargers are really the story. Should we believe in this Charger team ready to take off in October? They've done it the last couple of years. It seems like they're 0-4 to start the year every year and then play really well. They're 2-2, so is this a team that you like?
They found a way to win a game they're supposed to win, and that's something that a lot of times they didn't do early in the season. They barely did it, but they did find a way to do it, and they very easily could have lost that contest. Their secondary is not quite as good. Their rush defense is not as good. Their pass rush is not as good as it should be. If their defense starts to play to its talent level, I think that this is going to be a much more dangerous team down the stretch. When they've got some people they're going to have coming back, but they need to get that defense playing better because if they don't, again, too many shootouts, and they're going to be a 500 team.
All right, the Sunday night game, you had the Ravens go on the road. These games are usually really, really close, but the Ravens kind of took hold of this game early. The Steelers got back, but then the Ravens pulled away. What's going on with the Steelers? To lose a home game the way they lost that game, and the Ravens are now 3-1. Some very interesting stories from this one.
Couple things. The Steelers look like the Steelers for one quarter of that game. The other 3 quarters, you couldn't tell they were playing the Baltimore Ravens because usually that team plays to the talent level of its opponent, and for Baltimore games, they really step up. That looked like an unmotivated club, and I did a part of that article I did for ESPN's Plus Fantasy section. I looked at the Steelers' run blocking in that contest for this whole season, actually, and the run blocking has been extremely inconsistent. It hasn't been terrible, but it's been very inconsistent. Actually, it was terrible in week 2, but overall, it's been very inconsistent. So they're not getting the run blocking. Connor's not getting the ground game. They haven't leaned too much on the pass. Ben wants the offense to go through him. That team needs to decide what it is. Are we a Ben team? If we are, let's just go big, heavy throwing. But if we're not, let's fix this run blocking because if they keep going the way they are, this is going to be a 6-win season tops for them.
Should be fun at the quarter pole of the season. So, at the quarter pole of the season, what's been the biggest story surprise for you?
The biggest story is the Rams. I did the part of ESPN's power ranking section. We had to pick our rankings for the teams. That was the easiest pick besides the Cardinals at 32. It was the Rams at 1. It was by far the easiest pick. They're dominant in every way. To win the game, they like the way they did, and they're missing their top cornerbacks against that powerhouse passing offense, and they still go out there and win that game. Barring injury, that team is the leading contender. There's no other team that's even close to them. It's 1, and then there's like a gap between them and 2.
All right, quarter pole of the season. KC Joyner here. He'll be back on Friday to get us ready for the Eagles and Vikings and Week 5 of the NFL. And, of course, KC Joyner, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Always enjoy it, my friend.
Appreciate it.
All right.